Step right up here. Step right up. You young man, you young lady, step up to the Puppet Masters Castle Freaks podcast. Look inside and see horrors the likes of which you've never seen, including your two hosts from the deepest boroughs of New York, a mild-mannered school teacher by day, but by night he becomes the Tattooed Man. And over here from the southern wilds, normally a newspaper reporter, but by night you can see him as the man with 4 eyes. Oh, you've never seen such a horrible sight in your life. Each week they're going to sit down and talk about some of the most shocking, the most disgusting, the most cheaply produced movies you've ever seen in your life. So pay your nickel or give us 5-star review on Apple Podcasts, and you can enter the Puppet Masters Castle Freaks podcast if you dare.
Oh, I dare, all right.
Who's that guy?
Welcome, everyone, to episode 110 of Puppet Masters Castle Freaks, the internet's leading all things Charles Band podcast. I am one of your hosts, Jared Hornbeck, the podcaster who can digest anything. Literally anything. And, you know, Steve, you mentioned that I become the tattooed man, but it's kind of sad because other podcasters get a tattoo and it looks sexy. I get a tattoo and it looks ugly. I don't get it. Maybe I should stop before I get a second one.
Oh, yeah, that's the floodgates opening. You got to be careful. If you get more than one, it's just going everywhere. Yeah,
and who is that 4 eyes across the screen from me?
Well, it's me, Steve Gutley, and I just want to be worshipped, but don't touch me. This is the podcast about bug boys, inside out girls, and of course, Digestina. That's because this is the podcast about Sideshow, a early 2000s Fred Olin Ray joint that, let's say politely, it evokes Todd Browning's Freaks for a crazy fun little flick that I actually had a really good time watching. And we're joined by an amazing guest today. Who's joining us today, Jared, in the tent?
Sure. Yeah, he stepped right in. He heard the call in the beginning. Our guest today is Frank Sabatella, who is a New York-based writer and filmmaker. I think, you know, most famously for his film from a few years back called The Shed, if I'm getting that one correct. He's nodding at me, so I know that I am. Anyway, Frank, this has been a long time coming, so we're glad you finally were able to make it onto the show, and we're very excited to have you. What is going on?
I'm very happy to be here. Just hanging out on a Sunday morning, talking to you guys, and I'm excited to discuss Sideshow.
We're excited as well. We're excited that you brought this one to us because this was, I don't know about you, Jared, this was not really on my radar. There are a lot of movies that are like on our spreadsheet, but we don't really like register what they are or if they're any good or like what their legacy is. So like I was not super familiar with this one. This one is weirdly one of the harder to find of like the more recent crop of full moon movies. Most of these are on Tubi or Freevee or some kind of like free streaming platform. We had to go to some kind of a non-traditional lengths to see this movie in its mostly unadulterated form. But I'm really glad we went for the effort because I think this one's a little gem. I don't know. I had a great time at Sideshow.
Yeah.
I kind of do too, actually, if I'm being honest. Like, sorry, Frank, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, it's okay.
This is one for me that I was like, I kind of confused this. I would see its name in print and I knew it was out there and I'd seen the cover a few times, but I kept confusing it with Dr. Moreau's House of Pain.
Oh,
and
yeah.
then like the Haunted Casino, which we'll be talking about soon.
Yeah.
Because it's one of the ones I feel like, for whatever reason, I saw the cover art, particularly when they were announcing some of the ones they were doing for the noir versions.
Yeah.
And I kind of just supplanted Dr. Moreau's House of Pain with the Haunted Casino with Sideshow. I like in my brain, I mixed them all up to be one movie.
Yeah.
And then when I was like, saw this one separately, I went, oh no, this is like a Sideshow movie with Phil Fondacaro. That's pretty cool. Like I didn't think I realized that this was its own separate thing. And then, you know, when looking through kind of like lists of movies, we kind of stumbled upon Sideshow, Frank and myself, and then we realized it was a pretty good fit.
Yeah.
Tell them why, Frank.
Well, my production company is called Sideshow Pictures.
Oh,
So it just kind of fit perfectly, and I have a fascination with like sideshows and carnivals and that kind of whole jam. So it was just like, all right, this is perfect. It's my vibe.
Yeah,
I mean,
absolutely.
the Carney vibe is kind of an incredible one. Like, and I think you have this in common with Fred Olen Ray, who took on this movie because he's a big aficionado of like carnival culture. He collects a lot of like vintage kind of carnival stuff, a lot of which you can see in the backgrounds of this movie. And he was actually briefly a carny in Florida, which is, that must just be the wildest place to be a carny. Of all the places to be a carny, Florida carnies go the hardest. So that's
every article that starts with Florida man just looks like it's describing a carny.
Yeah.
So imagine the article that starts with a Florida carny.
I can't.
Yeah, exactly. It's kind of, I don't know. So it's an amazing aesthetic, and I kind of love the whole vibe of it. Just this idea of like people who have monetized their otherness and found this kind of community and found this kind of like weird little space. You know, it's why Freaks is such a resonant movie, even after like nearly 100 years. It's not just the stunt casting or the actual kind of oddity of who they cast in that movie. It's that they do have this kind of family dynamic and this family structure. And you see a little bit of that in this movie. The characters are maybe a little bit more malevolent and a little bit less like, you know, kind of misunderstood, you know, people with a code, but there's still a little bit of that going on.
In Todd Browning's Freaks, which was like one of my favorite movies, like way back in like, I think I discovered it in high school.
Yeah.
And I like showed it to all my friends. I was like, you got to see this movie. And like, we watched it like a million times. And that sort of like started me on the path of like fascination with like, you know, old world not turn of the century, but like early 20s, 30s carnivals, and just the underlying horror of it. Even when it wasn't horrific, there's still something mysterious and devious about it. And then, you know, I'm a you know, lifelong New Yorker. My dad was a Brooklynite, so it's just like being close to Coney Island and just knowing Coney Island still existed. It just all kind of was like always this carnival atmosphere was always somewhere in the background of my life. And
well, Frank, that's why you're one of us.
Yeah.
One of us.
One of us.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And to Steve, to your point about the difference I see between the similarities between Sideshow and Freaks are evident, but I would say the people in Sideshow are, you know, they're like sort of, they're evil and they're kind of bent on being evil, where the freaks in Freaks are motivated by revenge because they were wronged, you know, and they were protecting one of their own, you know.
Yeah, exactly. It's kind of showing that dual-edged sword, right? It's like they're not going to hurt you unless you hurt them. You know, they have their own culture and their own society, but they also have their own code, you know, and that includes a code of vengeance, which is amazing.
Even to, you know, Jared just said, you know, one of us, obviously the wedding scene in Freaks.
Yeah.
They were trying to accept her. They were accepting her. I forget what her character name was, but Olga Baklanova, I believe, is the actress's name. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that right, but they were trying to accept her into their family, into their society, and she rejected them. And that was really what drew the line.
Yeah.
Well, I was watching this and I was like you're saying, they live by a code. And I was reminded that when it's the Carney code, they are kings among men.
Yeah, exactly.
For sure.
We were beaten by the best. Sorry, I can't. I just the words Carney code just appeared in my brain, and all I can think of now is Jim Varney.
Yeah,
doing the
Simpsons,
voice,
right?
Yeah, making the cigarette go in his mouth and come out.
Do it again. Yeah. Not for a while. Yeah.
I also while we were talking about the Florida Carney, I would be remiss to not say that the title of that headline would have to say Florida Carney panhandles the panhandle. I mean, that's got to be what it is, right?
That's got to be a good one. That's the amazing one. All right, well, let's learn a little bit about the movie Sideshow. It was released July 11th, 2000. It's directed by Fred Olen Ray. It's written by Benjamin Carr, who I think now has like an unbroken streak of our last like 6 or 7 episodes have all been Benjamin Carr / Neil Marshall Stevens. So guy works. This stars Jamie Martz, Michael Amos, Scott McCann, Jesse Keenan, Gina Blackman, Peter Spellos as G. Gordon Bear, Curran Simpson, Shira DeLand, and the great Phil Fondacaro. So we welcome back to the show Fred Olin Ray, the prolific schlockmaster who the last time we talked about him, I believe, was Piranha Women, which was quite a while ago. And according to his IMDb, that is his most recent movie. He has not made a movie in 3 years now, which must be so hard for this guy because he's made 4 to 5 movies a year since like 1986, something like that. He's incredibly prolific. He works a whole ton. And he has his milieu. He does a lot of like low budget horror, a lot of like soft core, like goofy TNA flicks. I think he's kind of best known for things like Hollywood Chainsaw Hookers or what's the one with Brink and Michelle, the Scream Queen Slumber Party?
Slumber Party Massacre.
Yeah.
No, Scream Queen Hot Tub
Scream
Party.
Queen Hot Tub Party.
Yeah, with Kelly Maroney.
Isn't she's in Slumber Party Massacre as well?
Brink is,
yeah.
In the first one.
Yeah, absolutely. We love Brink. It's always happy to see her popping up and stuff.
I was surprised you left her name out of there, Steve. I was like, and you didn't mention in the cast friend of the show and former guest Brink Stevens.
It's true. I forgot to mention her because she's kind of buried like in the cast a little bit. And like when you look on Wikipedia, like her name doesn't appear in the cast because it's really kind of a cameo. But there are a lot of those in this, and Brink's just kind of always willing to kind of pop up and give a little juice to like 5 minutes of the movie.
Yeah, and I always we were talking about like Scream Queen Hot Tub Party, and I almost first said Nightmare Sisters, but I realized that's another Dakota joint.
Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah. So Fred Olin Ray, as I mentioned, was a particularly apt choice for working on this movie because he is a collector of Carney memorabilia and he was a former Carney himself. He also worked as he worked as a barker on a Midway in Florida, and he also worked as a professional wrestler in a traveling stage show. So the dude's got a really interesting career. He had crossed paths with Charles Band a number of times over the years. Obviously, they're running these parallel like B-movie empires. And they always liked each other, but he never really took a job for Charlie just because Charlie Band paid less than what he was used to being paid at that time. But when Sideshow came around in 2000, he really could not resist, even if it turned out to be kind of a challenging shoot. This movie only had 6 days allocated to shoot, which is by full moon standards fairly roomy, but still not a whole lot.
That's par for the course.
But but they're also locking themselves in because this is a movie shot entirely at night, right? You know, it takes place entirely over the course of one night. So they really only have 6 nights that they can get this done.
Steve, that's a really good point because I think one of the things that we often point out for a lot of these movies that were shot in under a week is how often stuff that should be shot at night is in waning daylight.
Yeah, exactly.
They're so limited with when they can shoot. But yeah, there is actually a lot of night shooting in this movie, which I didn't actually even really pay attention to until you just said it. And I'm like, actually for only a 6-day shoot, the fact that it all basically takes place at night is kind of impressive because we've seen a few movies with, scenes where there's a killer stalking someone or there's some violence happening. And it's
obviously
in the
daylight.
middle of day. Well, it's not even with the day for night filter or anything. It's just literally day night.
Right.
Like it's 2 in the afternoon.
Yeah,
exactly.
Someone's getting killed on their lunch break.
I would say from a production standpoint, I think they probably got away with a lot of stuff because they were inside a tent for a lot of the movies. So it's like you don't really know what time of day they shot it at, and it doesn't matter. Once they're in the tent, you can do whatever you want.
Exactly. That certainly helps. Yeah, that definitely helped. But it's kind of the thing that like we talked about when we covered Bleed. Devin Hamilton was a young guy, and so he would just like commit to basically not sleeping for a week, and bust it out and then do his day job during the day and then come in and shoot whenever he can, so like, you can, it's the kind of thing you can do when you're in your 20s, and you just want to, kind of make a movie. But Fred Olin Ray is not in his 20s at this point. He's already kind of a seasoned hand. So like, this is not really the situation he's used to working in. They had to crank out 15 pages a night to get this thing done, which is quite a heavy clip.
That's insane.
I think the original idea was to have the actors playing, so the spoiler alert, the characters in this all get kind of turned or mutated into some kind of like freak by the end of the movie.
Hmm.
The original intention was to have the actors get the makeup done and they were playing themselves in their freak versions. But the makeup effects in this were really elaborate and took a long time. And so they just didn't have the daylight, or they didn't have the hours in the day to make them up after shooting them scenes. So they're using doubles instead. So like when the Inside Out girl is like opening up her flesh, like that's a different actress than is playing her otherwise. Now this remains kind of one of Full Moon's underseen movies. And by Full Moon standards, it's actually a little hard to find in its unbutchered form. Now, you found a version of this, Jared, that's doing the thing that we've encountered a couple of times where they're like stretching the time limit by just like slowing the frame rate.
It's so crazy how many times we've encountered this already on the show. Like, I went to watch it on the Full Moon app, which is always kind of my de facto way to go. I'm like, I pay for the app. I have the app. I might as well find, because a lot of times that's where the remastered ones will pop up when they're available.
Yeah.
So obviously this shows up in standard definition, not remastered or anything like that, with 92-minute runtime. And I'm like, wow, okay, full hour and a half, got it. I start the movie, I start watching it, it feels off. It feels like it's buffering, it feels like it's lagging. People's line deliveries sound a little bit off. Like we said when we encountered Killjoy 2 and we didn't realize what was going on, and it just sounded like everyone was on Quaaludes.
Yeah, exactly.
Like this was kind of what that was like. And I went, all right, let me look at IMDb. Sure enough, 74 minutes. So I went to Prime. I looked for it, I didn't go to Prime. I went somewhere else first. I looked for it again, found another 90-minute version of it. And I was like, all right, well, let me look on Tubi. Pops up on William Shatner's Fright Night on Tubi.
Mm-hmm.
About 85 minutes, 84 minutes, something like that. But that's including the segments. And I'm like, all right, so this is the whole movie, slightly longer, but it's the 74-minute version of the movie. Sure enough, that starts. I mean, obviously, all the interstitials and the host segments of Shatner look like complete dog shit because they were shot for nothing. But like, the movie starts and it looks and sounds immeasurably better already.
Yeah.
For still being standard definition.
Yeah.
So much better than when I tried to watch it on the app. So I texted both you and Frank and was like, if you didn't watch, like, please watch this on the William Shatner Fright Night on Tubi because it's the best. But then Frank said he found it 74-minute version to watch. So at least we know he watched the actual
it was on
one.
Prime. I had to rent it, but it was the standard def and 74, 75 minutes, whatever it was.
Yeah.
And it looked okay. Would they shoot it on beta or something? It looked like
Your $2.99 check will be in the mail, Frank.
Yeah. They actually shot this in 35 mil. This is Mac Ahlberg kind of towards the end of his life, and they shot
That's
this
how
in 30
I felt too.
It's one of the last movies that Full Moon did in that aspect. So like, it's kind of crazy.
Yeah, it looked like the version I watched looked like beta or something. It looked like broadcast definition video. So I don't know if that has anything to do with how it was scanned.
Yeah,
or
I think it's.
I'm very surprised to hear that it was shot live.
Yeah, look, this is the prints that exist of this are very, very SD. I think it looks pretty good for what they're trying to do. It looks pretty cinematic in terms of movies the Full Moon was putting out at this era. Absolutely. And this movie had a budget of $120,000, which is Avatar money in Full Moon world, like at this era.
Wow.
Like that's like blockbuster. And honestly, I think they put the money to really good use. We'll get into the makeup effects, but I do want to take just 1 second on William Shatner's Full Moon Fright Night, which I had never actually engaged with any of these before. And yeah, like I said, Jared, the opening interstitial stuff looks like absolute dog shit. It is like my first like computer animation program or something. Like, I'm surprised I don't see like Hello Kitty bouncing around in some of these, like just as a watermark.
it's like a screensaver.
It's basically that, but like it looks really garbage. But then I found the segments with Shatner really funny.
Oh, sure.
I think he's very committed to this goofy bit. He's got this big like bartender with this grotesque Igor puppet head that looks bizarre, and they do these strange things like putting Shatner's face inside Peter Spelos's belly for the conjoino sequence, and I'm like,
yeah,
all right, like this is cheesy and dumb as hell, but it's also, it's a horror host show. It should be cheesy and dumb as hell. This is what.
Right.
That wasn't Shatner in Sideshow, was it?
No.
No,
Oh,
no.
okay.
That'd be amazing if that was.
I was like, hey, how did I miss that? Okay.
No, they just projected him onto the belly and like they color corrected it pretty decently for what must be like very minimal technology. I don't know. I found this sequence kind of fun. I thought this was an enjoyable way to watch this. I
think engaging in the movie this way actually boosted my enjoyment of it in general, because it kind of gave it a really kind of light feeling going into it. I mean, all said and done, like, it's a predictable, cheap movie.
Yeah.
You know where it's going. There's no real surprises in it. It's kind of much ado about nothing in that sense. Like, you follow characters around a little bit, but there's these little touches to it that I actually quite enjoyed, and it scratched an itch for me, which we've talked about this before. I don't remember what episode it was on that we talked about this, but this had a real, like, 31 Halloween Horror Nights Freeform Network feel to it.
It
like
did.
This is just like, I could have taped this off of television in the year 2000 on a VHS and watched it a bunch of times. Frank, you said that you felt like it was a more explicit "Are You Afraid of the Dark" episode.
Totally.
And like, I think that's absolutely correct. Like, there was something very warm and nostalgic feeling about the way that this looked, the time period, the way that the characters looked. Like, I could have 100% just saw that this movie was airing on TV, taped it, watched it a bunch of times, and there was almost like a worn VHS quality.
It's that like pre 9/11 like cheap TV vibe that's like kind of gone nowadays, and I miss it. I miss cheap television and like cheap made for TVs. Like, everything tries so hard to be cinematic and 4K and all this, that, and there's very few elements of that sort of cheap TV left. And I kind of wish I watched the William Shatner thing that you mentioned, because this totally needs to be like a horror host movie. Like, Joe Bob should show this movie, or Elvira, or Svengoolie, or something like that. Like, and speaking of cheap TV, fortunately, we still have Joe Bob and Svengoolie and Elvira occasionally.
Yeah.
Because there's like an innocence to that sort of just cheap, low production television, whether it's the hosting of the show or the movie itself, the content itself.
Yeah, I don't remember the episode where we talked about that aesthetic, but we did. And I just felt very like cozy watching it. And I could kind of picture myself at age like 18 or 19, just sitting in my bedroom at my parents' house, watching this. I can picture everything that's around me. I can picture the books on my shelf, the carpet, like all of this stuff. And it was just like, it's very tame in a lot of ways. Obviously, there's some gore and nudity that wouldn't have made it onto like a basic cable or network television type thing, but definitely a lot of it has that like late 90s ABC Family feeling to it. And I just was like, I got transported kind of watching it. But then it was fun because as much as I was kind of caught up in what was going on, there are moments then where like Phil Fondacaro comes out and brings me back into the present day, current reality of us doing the show. And it's like, we get to see some good. Last time we saw Phil Fondacaro, he wasn't used particularly well in the movie we talked about. Here, I feel like he gets a lot to do. And
he really like finds these roles like him playing Dracula in The Creeps or playing the professor in Troll. Like, I think he really enjoys getting to explore kind of these complicated like inner emotions of somebody who was born with kind of his particular physical disability. Like, like he gets picked up in this movie, which is really like humiliating for him. And like, but he's always really intelligent about the way he talks about it in these movies and gives a lot of like gravitas like to what could be just a cartoonish character.
I wonder if he's truly like in real life. I wonder if he's truly like his character in Ghoulies 2, where he's horny, but he's a thespian, and he's very like a Shakespearean, like taking the craft very seriously. Not that he shouldn't, or anyone in a B movie doesn't take the craft seriously, but I think Phil Fondacaro does bring a sort of not only a nostalgia and a sort of like B movie element, but he brings like a gravity to these movies. Like whenever I see him in a low budget horror movie, it makes me think like, oh, maybe this is a low budget horror movie worth watching. I'm a
Yeah.
guy that I love low budget horror movies. Like I love watching them. I like making them. But some of them do suck and they're hard to sit through. But whenever like Phil Fondacaro is involved, like I'm already in, you know?
And you know,
Well,
like
I'm
you
sorry,
get the
that's-
sense that like, you know, he's a little person actor, and little people actors have talked in the past about how hard it is to get like roles in which you get to show your face. You know, you get cast in a lot of costume parts and a lot of things, and it pays the rent and it gets your, you know, it's a paycheck and it's steady work. But I think the reason Phil Fondacaro kept coming back and working with Charles Band is that Band gave him dialogue. Band let him show his face, and sometimes he plays the little costume monsters too, and he's great at it. But he gets to actually act and emote and show his range.
Yeah, he does plenty of costumes and stuff like that, but for almost every one of those type of roles, he gets something like Troll,
Yeah,
which is something you
I
wouldn't
also-
normally
A
see
really
a little
excellent
person doing.
just such an excellent performance in that movie from him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Speaking of Troll, like I always wanted, even when I was a kid, like I wanted the little Phil Fondacaro puppet that's, you know, after he becomes trolled, if you will. That little puppet was like so cute. It looked just like him, but it was just his little slimy Phil Fondacaro.
Yeah. I bet. Well, I am willing to bet we have a connection to somebody who has access to that puppet somewhere. You know, maybe John Tarani's got that somewhere hidden away somewhere. We can find out. I'm willing to find out.
Tarani sleeps with the Phil Fondacaro troll puppet.
It's like his own personal glowworm. Yeah.
It's somewhere in that basement. You know, next to the space trucker's pig or under the Kroll sword.
Yeah.
It's somewhere in there. But no, Frank, you mentioned like your love of low budget horror movies and stuff, and you're in the same age range where you were, I'm sure. I mean, the conversations that you and I have had in person also lead me to believe this to be true. But you were probably a video store kid also. So
hell yeah.
What was the first kind of stuff that made an impression on you and made you gravitate towards that section of the store?
I am like a horror lifer as far back as I can remember, and I'm talking like all the way back to being like 4 years old. Horror was my thing. The first movie I ever saw in a movie theater was E.T.
Yeah.
And I was 4 years old, summer of '82, and the famous summer of '82. And I don't fully remember the experience of the entire movie in the theater, but what I do very specifically remember about E.T. is when we first meet E.T., that scare in the cornfield or wherever Elliot finds him. And I remember as a little kid, I was like, oh my God, this is really scary. And that excited me. And just from there, it's like I went like Poltergeist, and I think Amityville 2 or 3 had just come out. I think it was Amityville 3 maybe. My parents didn't stop me from watching anything, and like all that shit was
same. Yep.
PIX 11 would constantly play all those movies. I saw Friday the 13th Part 2 was the first horror movie I saw at my grandparents' house when I was really young. I should preface this with I had an older sister. I have an older sister, 5 years older than me. So, you know, that kind of helped me watch older stuff, I guess you could say. So if she put on Friday the 13th, I was watching it, you know? And it just started very young. I just gravitated. I wasn't into sports or anything like that. I was a creative kid. I used to draw. I had all the Remco Universal Monster toys, and my whole jam. There was no Blockbuster yet. You know, we're talking 81, 82, 83. So it was mom and pop rental shops were the hot thing. And there was one right up the block from my house, and I would walk up there, take my change, and rent horror movies. That's all I wanted to do, and that's all I did.
Yeah, Frank, I know you're you'll appreciate this. I think you probably saw me in it. Actually, I'm happy to wear my Shocktober T-shirt around, because I know as a New Yorker, you have some love for WPIX and Shocktober.
I need a Shocktober WPIX shirt, so I'm definitely gonna like bite your style, and I'm admiring your Vestron video shirt right now.
Thank you.
Yeah, he's got one for everything. Yeah, it's a pretty amazing. It's like Swiss Army shirts every time.
It's standard horror kid wear, just black t-shirt with an old logo, whether it's Vestron or
I love it.
Yeah, I mean it's sad that it's so easy to be so reductive to what it is, but it is. Who am I kidding? Like I know what it is.
It's a badge of honor. Yeah, just wear it.
Frank, have you read Chris Nashawadi's book, The Future Is Now, about the summer of '82?
I have not.
Oh, it's pretty awesome. He highlights.
Is it fiction? Is it fiction?
No. It's like he just picks like all the movies that were in the theater at the same time in the summer of '82. So it's like E.T., Blade Runner,
Poltergeist,
Conan the Barbarian.
Yeah,
and it's like he just highlights a chapter about each one.
Yeah, Conan the Barbarian or Conan the Destroyer? No, Conan the Barbarian.
It's Barbarian. Yeah, it's the first one. Yeah.
Right. Destroyer was like 84 or 85, right?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, yes. Yeah. 5. Yeah. We're part of another show called 30-20-10, where we'll occasionally go back like 40 years and look at movies through that. And they recently covered Conan the Destroyer, which was awesome. Watching it all the way through. I wasn't even on that episode, but I watched that movie all the way through, and it's fun. It's silly.
I watched it when I was a kid and I loved it. It was like ridiculous. I liked it better than Conan the Barbarian.
I kind of agree. Conan the Barbarian it's like a cool movie, and it's like probably the best big barbarian movie that you can make.
It's more like serious Conan the Barbarian. The word Conan the Destroyer, at least for a kid, it's far more like fantastic. You know, there's monsters and wizards, and Olivia Diabo in a see-through shirt riding a horse. It's like
hell yeah,
what do you want?
Grace Jones being insane. I love it. Yeah,
and also as a kid, I gravitated, I think, probably towards that one more because it had Wilt Chamberlain and Andre the Giant.
That's true. Oh, I forgot Andre's in there. Yeah,
but that first movie, the Basil Polidorus score is so fucking good.
Great. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, I love. Let's talk a little bit about the makeup effects that they pulled off for this movie, because I was genuinely very impressed. I was like, oh man, okay, they spent their money in the exact right direction. So we have a couple of like really noteworthy looking freaks in this. We get the Bug Boy, which is a very cool, very goopy kind of guy with like a proboscis like growing out of the side of it. He looks real gross. We get Peter Spellos coming in playing the conjoined twin who's got like kind of a quado in his stomach, which is easy to detect.
If I may interject for a moment about Peter Spellos, aka Orville Ketchum from Sorority House Massacre 2 and Hard to Kill. What I love about Peter Spellos is he's always credited as never credited as Peter Spellos. Like in the Slumber Party, Sorority House Massacre 2, it's Orville Ketchum as himself. Hard to Kill, it's Orville Ketchum as himself. Or is it Hard to Die or Hard to Kill?
Hard to Kill is a Seagal movie.
Yeah. Okay, so I think it's Hard to Die is the sequel to Sorority House Massacre 2. I don't know if you've seen it in the apartment building. It's all the same chicks and Orville Ketchum again. It's ridiculous. And then in this movie, Sideshow, he has, what was his title?
G. Gordon Bear. Yeah. Like,
I love that.
Really fun character actor. We lost him, I believe, 2 years ago, unfortunately. He was I know he was a friend of a couple of friends of the show. So I remember seeing a lot of posts when he passed. Sounds like he was a lovely guy. And he's really fun in this. He's kind of a big, physically imposing kind of guy. He's almost
exactly Orville Ketchum in this. Like he's wearing the same clothes and everything as Orville Ketchum.
Yeah.
What I like, sorry, Steve. What I like about this is, when we have conversations on this show, I hope people take away that, like, whether it's me and Steve or a guest as well, that we kind of hit on like things that maybe not every podcast is talking about. And my favorite part is that for Peter Spellos, Frank, that you went to a Sorority House Massacre 2 and not Freddy's Dead, which would feel the more obvious horror choice.
Freddy's Dead. But I think he's credited as Peter Spellos in Freddy's Dead.
He is. Yeah.
I know and love him as Orville Ketchum from Sorority House Massacre 2.
Yeah. And he gets a lot of fun stuff to do in this. And then our other freaks are Digestina, which is a wild concept. She is just a sexy naked lady who swims around in
her own digestive fluids, which is really disgusting.
Really kind of a gross idea. It looks like she's swimming around in like the vomit from bad taste. It's like really gross and chunky.
And what I didn't quite understand about Digestina is like, okay, so she's floating in her own stomach enzymes and she's naked, and then she'll just like drop a steak into it, and it's like, so is that nourishing her? Did she absorb the nutrients from what's digested in there? Like, what
Unclear.
exactly can she come
She
out
keeps,
of her own bile? Like, what?
Yeah.
So many questions.
Sorry.
Hang on, sorry.
No problem.
Yeah, lost a little connection there. So Digestina is just like a really kind of cool and creepy idea. Like logistically, it doesn't really make sense because it's like apparently, like you said, she's eating this stuff and absorbing it, but then like she's got a full toaster in there that she didn't digest. She's got an alarm clock.
Right.
She's got all this. She's doing bits, and she is kind of like stuck in her pool basically because of her affliction. But it's a really interesting idea. And then
is it an affliction, or is she just floating in bile? Like it's just it's not quite explained what exactly the deal is.
Yeah.
I watched her take that steak into the water and then pull out the bones. So I was wondering if there was going to be some implication that because then Phil Fondacaro is like, he goes, when most of us eat something, and then he pauses, and I thought he was going to say like, we use our mouths, but she doesn't, and was going to imply that she was using either her vagina or asshole to eat this steak. He does not say that though. He then says it leaves us forever, yet it stays with her. So the science behind Digestina is a bit spotty.
I think we should check with a medical expert and see if we can get some clarity on Digestina.
Yeah, and if it's possible to live in a bucket of your own stomach acids and just like survive that way and still be incredibly good looking, apparently. Like
there's nothing medically curious about Orville Ketchum's character. I can believe that if you have a living human face growing out of your stomach, that it would have a fully formed personality. I'm fine with that.
Yeah. Look, I saw the documentary Basket Case. I know. Yeah, I understand. Like it's all fine. But I think kind of the most striking and interesting of this kind of cavalcade of freaks here is the Inside Out girl, who is basically just like a sexy lady doing a burlesque number. And then after she takes off her clothes, she just keeps going, and she opens up her skin, and like you can just see the musculature and the tissue underneath. Yeah. And you understand how the effect is done. Like you can, if you're familiar with this type of movie, if you're familiar with movies in general, like there's no real mystery, there's no real magic in how it's done, but it's done really well.
Yeah, like, it's an effective effect.
It's super gross. And like later on in the movie, she is kind of seducing one of the lunkhead teens who kind of wanders into this film. And her way of killing him or changing him or mutating him or whatever it is she does is by opening up her flesh and like basically like motorboating him with her intestines, like she's just kind of like holding his face in her guts and like dissolving him.
Somehow that like digests his face or something.
Or turns
like
him into a bird.
Like Digestina's kill.
Right. It seems like it should have been, right? Like that didn't really align with what we've kind of learned about what these people can do. And Tommy does not die from this instance. He gets turned into a bird man, which doesn't make sense anywhere outside of, this is a direct reference to Freaks. Yeah.
Another medical curiosity there.
Yeah. And some of these are kind of following like a Needful Things, monkey's paw kind of careful what you wish for sort of thing. Like there's the woman who wishes that she had a better body, and so she gets her face or her wish granted, and she gets a smoking body, and then her face is like gone.
So my prediction there, she was like, I would have that body, and she's looking at the statue. I thought she was going to be like decapitated and have her arms and legs chopped off because the statue was just a body.
Like she's going to turn into the
Yeah.
actual Venus de Milo, like
Right,
just
right, yeah.
without a head.
That's what I thought they were doing too. Yeah, and it was kind of like spiritually that, but yeah, I think the one that kind of makes the one that makes the most sense for the character was the woman who just wanted to be like adored, but she was kind of phobic of being touched, right? So she gets shrunk down and fully bad channeled and put inside like a little jar with a mirror for the rest of her life, and just gets to like admire herself, and nobody can touch her.
She seemed okay with it though. Like,
yeah. She of all the people, she
was kind of like, oh, good. This is what I wanted. Where
me, I would get bored. I think,
yeah, I would probably get a little bored. The I forget what the main character's name. The guy that got turned into like a canary or whatever the fuck that was. he got it pretty bad, that, and it didn't really make a lot of sense. You become what you are on the inside. So he was a canary on the inside. I wasn't really.
I felt like he's a stool pigeon.
Well, yeah, but what does that even mean?
That doesn't apply to his situation, because he was the guy. He was kind of like the asshole, right? He's the one who sort of instigated everything by picking up on the car.
Canaries are assholes. Is that?
Famously, all Trump voters, every one of them. Yeah. That's why they're. Yeah.
When someone describes a basket of deplorables, but you didn't know is it's just a basket of dead canaries.
Just a basket of canaries.
Yeah, exactly. That's
I'll say, tying it back to Todd Browning's Freaks. That ending doesn't really make sense either. That somehow they turned her into a chicken.
It makes no sense at all. Yeah, no, it makes no sense.
They seized her, and now she's a chicken.
Yeah, I think it. So in a way, it could just be a reference to that. How it's kind of like this weird non sequitur. That's just like, yeah, we're gonna make her into a freak, but it's not like really an ironic fate for her. It's just sort of like, oh, she was very beautiful and glamorous, and now she's this thing.
Now she's a chicken mama.
Yeah, exactly. So I feel like for Tommy, it should have been something to do with like his hot temper, like he should be the flame boy or something like that.
Yeah, like his head's on fire because he's so hot-headed.
Yeah, exactly.
Maybe he should be reincarnated as someone who can do a ring toss game.
Yeah, right. God, come on, man.
That scene is kind of hilarious for a number of reasons. One, because he's throwing the rings directly at the prize. Like they keep like bouncing off this stuffed koala that he's trying to win, and
it's not going to fit on the koala, dude. You go for the pegs.
Right, but then not only that, but it's like then Melanie, the character, is just like, I don't want that, right? And he's like, shut the fuck up. Yes, you do. I'm gonna win that for you. He's
a koala, and you're gonna fucking like it.
Yeah. And I mean, like. Yeah, it's kind of ridiculous, but it's like it's a fun way of kind of introducing you into this world and sort of like setting up these ironic stakes, even if they're not all really totally paid off. And then there's the kid in the wheelchair who is like he's like a fan of sideshows. He's been to 21 sideshows in his life. Okay, and in the year 2000, are there 21 sideshows still active in the United States? I can't imagine there is. I think we're down to 1 in the current year, right? Maybe even less.
I mean, you can go down to Coney. Yeah, that's not traveling.
Even Coney Island, they're not actually human oddities anymore. It's like sword swallowing, and so like it's not a human oddity. It is a sideshow performance, but there's no freaks, so to speak, anymore.
Yeah,
they are, but not at Coney Island.
Yeah, and I think I remember seeing there was one like still touring like human oddity show, and I just don't know if that's even still active anymore. But
when I was an adolescent, I mean, I was probably like 11 or 12 years old, and honestly, I don't even remember where exactly it was. There was a sideshow somewhere on Long Island, and there was a freak show, and it's the only real freak show I ever went to. And I remember there was like the tiny woman, and the poster was like, it showed like a 6-inch tall woman. And then when I went in, she was a little person, but she was very little. She wasn't like Barbie doll size, like the like the poster led me to believe, obviously, but she was basically just a very little person and had some other kind of deformities. I'll never forget it, actually. Her name was Ruby, and I was so close to her, and we were talking to her, and it kind of weirded me out as a little kid, you know? Like, I didn't know that, like, once I walked into the tented area that she was going to be there, like, right there. You know, you could have, like, touched her if you wanted. She was a friendly, polite, lovely woman, you know, but, like, it was just bizarre. It freaked me out, honestly, as a kid. That, like, the freaks were right there. Not to call her a freak, but
yeah, I feel like my experience with freak shows is like you're saying, Frank, now, where it's just like a lot of people doing tricks and stuff. I don't think I've ever actually been to a sideshow with human abnormalities before.
Which, traditionally, there was a freak. A freak was somebody that had, you know, a deformity or abnormality, if you will. The others that like did something to be strange were called geeks. That's what a geek was.
Yeah,
right,
like,
exactly.
You know, biting the head off a chicken or stuff like that, where it's like you're not born with this infirmity, you're doing something to be a freak. That's where the term geek actually came from. So freaks and geeks were two different things. Freaks are born that way, geeks do something to themselves.
Yeah. I
like
just
Lobster Boy, we were just talking about.
Yeah.
It came up at the last Visual Vengeance, actually, and that is a traditional freak. You know, he was born with a genetic infirmity, I guess.
I did just go on a very ridiculous side tangent here because I was looking up what else actress Curran Simpson, who plays the Inside Out girl, was in. She only did 2 short films, but one of them seems very Jared coded because it's 11 minutes long. It's called Brenda Blixman Stole My Cowboy Boots. It stars about Curran Simpson is one of like 20 people playing a character just called Nick Cave Fan. And the star of the short film is one Michael Imperioli.
No way.
Wow. There you go. Look that one up. I don't know if that exists anywhere, but that's wild.
Little rabbit hole you went down.
Just fell down a rabbit hole. That always happens. Yeah. Because I always love looking up the casts for these movies to kind of see what else other people have done. This group, not a whole lot of people went on to other things. A lot of these are Fred Olen Ray regulars who he brought in as like just kind of a nod. Like Brink has been in 800 of his movies at this point. Like she always kind of shows up for Fred Olen Ray.
Like a B-movie regular.
Yeah, exactly. Like Ross Hagen, who plays the sheriff in this, is one of his guys, and Peter Spellos is one of his guys, you know. So like he got to bring in a lot of people like that. It's really a shame that this one didn't cross over more. You know, this one came out in a time when Full Moon, as we've covered very extensively, was kind of at its lowest ebb. You know, the Paramount deal had ended, the Kushner Lock deal had ended. They're about to enter the Tempe era, which is an era where there are some good movies that came out of that time, but there are also this is the lowest budgeted they've ever been, you know. So this 120,000 at this time feels very splashy.
I'm actually, I'm even like shocked to hear that was the budget of this movie.
Yeah.
When I was watching it, I was just like, I'm by nature, I just try to like predict budgets when I'm looking at films, and I was like, this had to be like $25,000, $30,000. Like it came off really, really cheap. And that's because I think also the standard definition definitely yanks some production value vibes out of it.
For sure.
And are you positive it was shot on 35?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It looks so video.
Well, I even said to you, Frank, off mic, I made a comment about a cheap shot on video movie referring to this movie. And it wasn't until I went and reread the section of It Came From the Video Aisle where there's an interview with Fred Olen Ray, and he talked about shooting on 35 millimeter. And I read that and I said, wow, I did not think.
You know what? It's got to be like, you know, however they did this scan or something like that. It's just so videoed out, you know, but that's why I thought it was like beta, like a HD beta or something.
Yeah.
I wonder if when you make films that are going direct to video, like stuff that's shot on 35 but then is not going distributed theatrically and is going directly on video, I wonder if, you know, they just kind of make that scan right away. Like I wonder if the 35 print of this exists somewhere.
Oh yeah, it very well
must.
Yeah,
And like, are you guys familiar with Boarding House?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, so I own the rights to Boarding House, and I released it with Vinegar Syndrome like 2 years ago. And Boarding House was shot on beta, and in 1982 they transferred the beta to 35 millimeter so that they could do a theatrical. But the home video version was the video beta version. So the version that went to tape, they just used the beta master, and the version that went to theaters, they made this bizarre 35 millimeter print from a beta movie. And what we ended up doing, I'm plugging our Boarding House release, we found like pretty much the only existing 35 millimeter print of Boarding House and did like a 2K scan with AGFA and released it on Blu-ray, and it's fucking dope. Like, it looks so cool because it's this shot on video movie on this old beat up 35 millimeter print, and it just has this like ultra bizarre look to it. Highly recommend checking it out if you haven't seen this version of it. Just, it looks so cool.
Oh, it sounds amazing.
Yeah, I'm familiar with the early filmography of one John Wintergate. I have not. I don't think I've seen it in that presentation though, Frank. So I'm definitely interested in checking that out because I don't. I don't think I've ever seen it that way. I just always sort of knew it as like what was kind of the first of the wave of like shot on video movies.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
I don't think I'm familiar with this one. Wow, budget of $10,000, 1982. Wow,
it's spectacular.
That's incredible.
It's so spectacular. Like,
I feel confident plugging it for our listeners, like based on what I know about people who listen to this show. Like, you're going to want to watch Boarding House.
There's a couple of there's the Blu-ray that came out from Vinegar Syndrome, AGFA, and Bleeding Skull, and then we're releasing a home video version on VHS. I think it's available now through Lunch Meat. So the VHS version is from the beta. So it's the beta video version. It's 4:3, this, that, and the other thing. The Blu-ray version is probably the most bang for your buck because it has the 2K scan of the 35 millimeter version, and it has the original beta version on there as well, and an unreleased John Wintergate film called Sally and Jess that was shot on 16 millimeter that was never released until now. So I highly recommend it. I'm not just saying that because we released it. Like, the reason I got involved and did it was because I was so into this movie. And I feel like it's like all of us here that are into low budget movies and shot on video stuff, it's a winner.
Yeah. Agreed. Well, and I think the same thing could be said about Sideshow. Do we have any final thoughts about the movie Sideshow before we close?
Oh, I have a question.
Yeah.
You guys might be able to answer about Sideshow. The version I watched had like an alt title. Like, the title card was like The Horror Freak Show or something like that. I forgot what it said, or Horrible Freaks or something. Any info on that?
That happens so often. Sometimes, like, it's kind of a classic, like, a holdover from the Grindhouse days, of like going back and just having different titles for different markets, because they're worried it's not going to appeal to certain things. So, and sometimes, like, the prints that we get on Tubi or on Prime are like work prints or something like that, and they haven't really like locked or something. So that's come up for us quite a few times. I forget what others, but like there were a few.
Well, the episode that is the most recently released at the time of recording was for Deadly Stingers, which never got a release under the title Deadly Stingers, only released as Mega Scorpions. Yeah. So that's one too, where it's like we advertised our next episode as being Deadly Stingers, but basically every single piece of poster art or anything that we've attached to a promotional post has said Mega Scorpions, because it took that movie like 10 years to get released physically in any form. And I think it was or maybe not even physically, maybe just for streaming. I'm not even
I think so
100% sure. But I think someone commented, because that episode only came out a few days ago, and I think someone commented maybe that there is no physical release of that movie, but it was
Sideshow or of Scorpion
of Deadly Stingers, and you were able to stream it as Mega Scorpions. But I know the movie was made as Deadly Stingers. I remembered first reading about it in DJ's book as Deadly Stingers. But it's just weird that happens a lot, and it's going to happen with the Haunted Casino, which you guys will hear in a few weeks.
Yeah.
Otherwise known as Dead Man's Hand.
This was the era in particular where Charles Span is kind of playing the distributor shuffle, right? So like he's always trying to find new people to set out his movies, and like the VHS and DVD market is kind of slowly dying around this era. So like it's a little inconsistent, and you never quite know who has the rights. So sometimes like producers will just buy it up and change the title. So that's very common. And we try and note if there's multiple titles when we can. I missed that this one had a multiple title. I think just because I watched it through the Shatner milieu, which is Full Moon approved and kind of vetted, and they're going to use the title that they want.
Yeah, so I didn't even. At first, I was like, "Am I watching the wrong movie?" Because it said Sideshow, and then when it started, it was like I forget exactly what it was, like the Horrible Freaks or the Horror Freaks or Horror Carnival or something. Like a very on the nose title.
Yeah.
And it also it said copyright 2015. So I wonder if this was some like version or something, or I don't know. It was weird. And I know shit like that happens all the time. Like if you've ever watched like Blood Rage, the actual title is Slasher on the title card, or Trick or Treat is Ragman,
My favorite of all of those is when you watch the Mutilator and it says Fall Break.
Fall Break. Yeah.
Fall Break. Is that the name of that movie? Oh God. Okay. I've only ever seen.
It's definitely the name of that amazing song in the movie.
Oh right. Yes.
Yeah.
We're going on a fall break. Yeah. That movie's terrible.
It really feels like they're trying to make Fall Break happen, and it's just not happening. Like, fall is when you go back to school. What is
fall break?
Yeah, there's no fall break. There's Thanksgiving break, I guess maybe like a long weekend for, I don't know.
Which is basically
Labor Day
when that movie takes place. So it's like they're calling it a break, but it's really just a long weekend, and it doesn't make any sense.
Rebrand. It's like spring break for horror kids.
Yeah.
And it starts and they're getting ready to go on that trip, and then that amazing song plays for about 16 minutes over the opening credits and beginning of the movie. But I will say, whoever had the idea to change the title to The Mutilator and then make that amazing poster with that amazing tagline.
Excellent poster. Tagline. Not a great movie.
No.
And I love bad slashers.
Yeah. That one's a bit of a tough sit, but yeah, great.
I don't know, man. I'm a little more charitable to that one. I think there's a couple of gnarly. It's certainly not good, but there's a couple of good kills in it. For sure. But I feel like I'm more charitable to Sideshow also than I was expecting to be. I mean, like I mentioned before, not a whole lot happens that's not predictable, but this is like a kind of tame, except for obviously a little occasional nudity and some cool gore effects. But very comforting, very kind of homey.
Yeah, it was like cute.
Feeling. Yeah, and I enjoyed watching it. I thought watching it with the Shatner Fright Night was perfect in terms of like the way to consume a movie like this. And I thought, like Steve mentioned earlier, this is one of those movies where I felt like, even though it was shot on 35 but looked like tape, you had Mac Ahlberg shooting it, who knows how to set up shots and knows how to, block and knows how to do all of these things pretty well to give it, even if it didn't have a cinematic feel in terms of the quality of like the scan or print that we were watching of the movie, it did, at least in terms of the way things were presented. It wasn't like, characters had marks and had to stand in certain places. It wasn't just like static camera with two people talking at each other. I mean, you occasionally have a moving camera. And I thought it was professional in those ways. And I remember like when I knew that it was a Fred Olen Ray movie, I was expecting it to be a little more exploitative than it was. And not that I have a problem with exploitation movies. I love exploitation movies, but there was a wholesomeness to this movie that I wasn't expecting. Yeah. And it really informed my viewing, and having it sort of poked and prodded slightly with like a Shatner who's doing, his normal kind of like Shatner and playing it to the rafters type energy. I thought was just really welcome. And I like Phil Fondacaro, always a welcome presence. And I thought, like, even though the movie didn't do anything too crazy, the kind of monkey's paw / Willy Wonka aspect of it was kind of nice almost to predict where it was going. And it was a cool, 74 minutes that I didn't really feel like dragged at any point. Like,
No.
I like this one. I definitely didn't know what to expect going in, and I walked away from it thinking that this is one nobody talks about. And for this Kushner lock end Tempe beginning, this is probably one of the better efforts.
I agree. I had a great time with this. I think there's a lot of great makeup effects, a lot of fun performances in this, and just a lot of cool ideas. So I was very pleasantly surprised with my time with Sideshow. And we thank you. Yeah,
I thought it was going to be really hard to sit through, and it was actually enjoyable. And the short running time was like a breath of fresh air. Like, I was just like, all right, it didn't hang around too long. Like you said, predictable, but like it moved, everything led to the next. And then when there was nothing left to do, they were out, where to me, I liked it.
I mean, we've hit the point on this show where, like, if a movie is 90 minutes, we're reacting like it's Andrei Rublev or something. It's just like, oh my God, seriously? 90 minutes? Oh, it was a finite amount of time. So yeah, 75 to 80 is like the sweet spot, and you got to love it when they do that. But thank you so much,
sure.
Frank, for being on the show and for bringing this movie to us. It's been a delight having you on. Can you tell our listeners where they can find your stuff if they want to track you down?
Yeah, pretty much my movies are available to rent wherever you rent your movies. Amazon Prime, Apple, all the usual places. Just look up The Shed, as Jared mentioned. My first slasher movie from like a little over a decade ago, Blood Night, is also out there.
Oh yeah,
that one might be on Tubi, so if you could catch that for free, definitely catch it for free. And that's pretty much it. You can go to possibly Shudder. The Shed might be on, or it was on. But if you Google it, you'll find it.
Awesome.
I always find that so remarkable. Like it's just the state of movie making. Like, we've had a lot of filmmakers on this show, and they're never quite sure where their movies are streaming. I'm like, I feel like they should tell you guys.
They do, like, at first.
Yeah, at first, and then
like, you know the initial wave, but it's all these like, and it gets like confusing because like originally, like when The Shed came out, it was streaming on Shudder. So if you had a Shudder subscription, you could stream it there. But that was like, it was Shudder's exclusive streaming, so nobody else could stream it for a year. But then you could rent it like a year later on Apple and Amazon or whatever, and it just rapidly gets very confusing about like the timing of the licenses and all that crap. And it's like by that point in my life, it's like you're just like moved on from, you know what I'm saying? Like, it's just not like cut and dry. It's not just like, hey, it's here and that's it, go watch it. It's like anything else. Like, you try to go watch for Friday the 13th, and it's like it's only on one streaming network for X amount of time, and then you go back there later to watch it, and you're like, oh shit, it's not on Netflix anymore, now it's on HBO, and then whatever,
And they shift them around a lot without like letting people know. It's just kind of crazy. I feel like they should just tag you in an email or something like that.
The filmmaker's like the last to know anything.
Yeah.
And the last to get paid.
Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, that's a bummer.
Well, if you track down any of Frank's stuff and check it out, I'm sure you'll find something that you can enjoy. If you enjoy what we do on the show, then jump onto Apple Podcasts or Spotify, drop us a little 5-star rating, maybe a brief review also, if you feel so inclined to do so. We welcome comments on Spotify too after episodes drop. We like to check those out and reply to the comments on Spotify, just a fun way for us to engage with the show. If you have anything you want to say to us, a letter or some kind of feedback or corrections or anything that you want to let us know, you can reach us at puppetmasterscastlefreaks@gmail.com. You can mainly keep up with the show on Instagram. You can follow the show at _Castle Freaks. You can follow me at _Giallo_Jared or Steve at Minotaur Matador. We've got our audio versions of the show up on YouTube. And we also promote stuff on Threads and Blue Sky in our Facebook group. But, it's a lot of work, and we're not the only show that Steve has to promote and do all this stuff for. So, Steve, what else have you got going on?
Well, I'm also the host of a show called Cinema Arcade. That's cinema and arcade mashed together. That is what we do on that show. We are watching movies and then playing the video games that are based on that movie. So we're actually at a weird random point where we are kind of almost caught up with the release schedule of this show. Like, we actually recorded ahead a couple of episodes. So I can almost promote the show in real time. We recently had episodes on the first 2 Predator movies. Lots of fun there. We got to talk about the Billy Zane Phantom from 1996, which I'd never seen before. Had a blast with that. We got to talk about things like Reign of Fire and From Russia with Love. And coming up this week, a movie that people have been begging us to talk about. Obviously, Jerry Seinfeld's B movie. Going to be quite an adventure. I just rewatched that this morning with my girlfriend, who was deeply baffled by everything that was happening in that movie. And I respect it. So, check that out wherever you get your podcasts. And also be sure to check us out next week, because we are having another double feature, thematically related movies that we're going to be talking about, neither of which I've ever seen, but we're going to be talking about Savage Island and Savage Streets. 2 things. Two of them, both Savage. Haven't seen either, so I'm excited to dig into it. These are Empire releases, I believe, right?
Well, so a little caveat here, as I'm sure some people listening to the show are scratching their heads right now to figure out how exactly one of these fits in. So Savage Island is an Empire release, so we will talk about it. But it features Linda Blair. And, we kind of thought about this one and we went, might not be a ton there, might not be enough for an entire episode. So why not lump it in with another Savage Linda Blair movie,
Sure.
Savage Streets, which is not connected to Charles Band in any way that I know of, but it is directed by Schlockmaster and Sleaze proprietor Danny Steinman, who directed Friday the 13th 5.
Friday Part 5, baby.
So you know what you're getting into.
And a whole bunch of porno, if I remember correctly, before that. Yeah.
And a movie with a really deranged Sidney Lassick called The Unseen.
I wonder if you could triple up that episode and just cram in Savage Beach.
The Sedaris film.
Zero relation whatsoever other than the word savage.
Oh man, I wish we could fold Andy Sedaris into this show.
Somehow.
Yeah, those movies are insane and so fun.
Yeah, I love those movies.
If nothing else, we can mention it tangentially and spend 2 minutes talking about Andy Sedaris, which we have not had the opportunity to do.
Those are all free
so far on the show.
I think all the Sedaris films are on Tubi for free.
Oh wow, yeah, I wouldn't be surprised. Not that I need it. I bought the box
set. Heavy hitters are Hard Ticket to Hawaii. Paso Trigger, and I think Savage Beach and Return to Savage Beach for sure.
Yeah, amazing. Yeah, definitely up there. Well, thank you everybody for listening. Be sure to give us a rating and review on Apple Podcasts if you get a chance. It really does help make a difference for little shows like us to get seen and heard and paid attention to. And we will see you next week as we hit the Savage Streets after a stop off on Savage Island.
I don't have a cool Carnival Barker outro, so we're just going to awkwardly let this fade out into our theme.
Yeah. Get out.